Last time we were discussing about different case studies that were related to software failure. The main topic is actually the software reliability. If software is reliable, then obviously there will be less failures. So after many incidents that were actually related to software failures, after too many failures, people actually thought about some more formal procedure of the software development. And then actually this term software engineering very first time it was coined in 1969. There are actually, different people divide or actually classify software development into different phases. In very general way, we can actually divide it into 4 phases. The first one is specification. Specification, what does it mean? इमाद बताएं, आप तो सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियरिंग के सारे स्टूडेंट्स हैं ना, आप लोग बताएं. सिस्टम रिक्वायरमेंट्स, ठीक है. अच्छा, ठीक है. वी एक्चुअली collect the system requirements, we actually study the feasibility of the system. और इसका क्या मतलब है constraints का? Boundaries. देखिए, when we say software specification, first of all it means that we need to interact with the customer, with the client, we need to collect, we need to gather the requirements, and then actually we specify those requirements in a way that is actually convenient to the customer, to the client, and also the development team can understand it. So we try to understand the user's requirements, the customer's requirements when we actually interact with the customers. Obviously we try to understand the constraints. There are different types of constraints, maybe technical constraints or non-technical constraints. When we say technical constraints, that means that client have some specific requirements for the platform, for the operating system, for some specific tools and technologies. What will be the resultant system, the product. And obviously non-technical requirements or constraints can be like what is the budget, what is the time that is allocated time for that project. So different type of constraints. And obviously when we say feasibility is, yes, that is again related to the cost, time, scope of the project or the software. So what we actually get, the artifacts, the output of the software specification, that is the document, the artifact which actually has the list of collection of the requirements. And what I said earlier, that it should be in a way that customer can understand. It shouldn't be like very technical document that only the developers can understand it. That document is called software requirement specification, SRS in journal. That is for client as well as for development team, for the producer of the software. Okay, so high level statements of requirements mean that are actually have little bit more abstraction for the customer, not really very technical, but yes, again understandable for the both parties. And mock-up of user interface, we actually try to come up with some prototypes to just show that what will be the look and feel of the system, and we get the input from the customer, from the users, rather than giving the surprise to the customer. You actually develop the whole system, and once you show it to the customer, his or their reaction is like, what is it? So avoid that surprise. You actually develop some prototypes, mock-ups for the customer, and get the feedback of the users. Users, client, customers are all actually the same thing. I mean in general. Here we are using in the same context. Okay. Low-level requirement statements that are more technical, that are easily, understandable, and actually to design and implement the system, you need to have a very specific kind of description for your team. Okay. So the next step is development. Development includes the design and implementation. You design the software, the system, and obviously there are different type of approaches, and different tools are available, like case tools. Case tools, you know case tools. Case kabhi suna ye term, case tools? Computer assisted software engineering or computer aided software engineering tools, like the tool that you use for modeling and the design of the system or the software. That, for example, Microsoft Visio is a tool that you actually use to model the design of your system. Object-oriented systems have advantages. I think you have already studied this course. You are very familiar with this object-oriented concepts. This is very close to the reality of, in real life we have the entities and the objects. We try to actually map those real entities to the programming languages in that context, in object-oriented languages. And definitely we have other benefits, other features of the object-oriented programming, like cohesion, coupling, inheritance, and so on. And once we have the detailed design, then actually we implement that system according to the detailed design. Okay, and obviously at the end we have the working system. Validation is about testing. We have, I think, in this chapter earlier we actually discussed that we do testing to actually validate the requirements, and we obviously, when we are testing the software, it needs a lot of time, it needs a lot of resources. So it depends on the allocated resources. If you have enough resources, enough time, and the budget, then you actually can do this testing and do this validation in a thorough way. Otherwise, you will deliver the system that most probably will have bugs. So, exhaustive testing is impossible. Why? फैजान, क्या कहते हैं आप इसके बारे में? Exhaustive testing impossible. कोई भी आप में से बताए, कोई भी, anyone? इकरा, बताएं? नहीं. Exhaustive testing impossible means that we actually cannot do the testing to the maximum or up to the whatever is possible extent. क्यों? ऐसा क्यों है? Exactly, we have virtually, infinite number of inputs. So we have not, like in real life, we doesn't have too much time to actually make sure that we are going to validate, we are going to test our system for every input. Obviously, it is not possible. Okay? So what we do, we actually identify some range of inputs, we actually identify some, kind of edges of the inputs, and then we actually just try to minimize the number of errors. The next is testing reveals bugs but cannot prove none exist. It's again related to this one. When we actually perform like a set of test cases, yes, we can identify the bugs, we can identify the errors, but we cannot guarantee that there is no error because we cannot actually do the exhaustive testing. ठीक है ना, जब आपने हर इनपुट के अगेंस्ट उसको देखा ही नहीं है तो आप गारंटी नहीं कर सकते हैं कि इसके अंदर कोई बग नहीं है, कोई एरर नहीं है. ठीक है, बट यू जस्ट ट्राई टू एक्चुअली एक्सपोज और यू ट्राई टू आइडेंटिफाई द मैक्सिमम द पॉसिबल बग्स. ठीक है ना, जो वो टेस्ट केसेस शुड बी इन अ वे दैट एक्चुअली कैन आइडेंटिफाई मैक्सिमम नंबर ऑफ एरर्स. ठीक है ना, कैसे हो सकता है अगर आपने टेस्टिंग करनी हो तो क्या सबसे पहली दो क्या डिविजन्स हो सकती हैं इनपुट्स की, बताएं. कोई एक छोटा सा आपने प्रोग्राम बनाया ना एडिशन का, तो उसको कैसे टेस्ट करेंगे अगर आपने टेस्टिंग करनी है उसकी, तो कैसे टेस्टिंग करेंगे. ऑब्वियसली यू विल रन इट. वैल्यूज कैसे इनपुट्स के साथ उसको वो करेंगे. देखिए सबसे पहले वैलिड एंड इनवैलिड इनपुट. एक वैलिड इनपुट दे के आप देखेंगे अगर इफ इट इज लाइक फॉर टू ऐड टू इंटीजर वैल्यूज. ठीक है, तो इंटीजर वैल्यूज देंगे, नेक्स्ट टाइम आप क्या करेंगे उसके अंदर फ्लोट वैल्यूज दे दें, फ्लोटिंग वैल्यू. ठीक है, या उसके अंदर स्ट्रिंग दे दें, टेक्स्ट दे दें. तो ये अगेन टेस्टिंग हो रही है ना कि ये तो नहीं है कि कहीं फ्लोटिंग वैल्यू को भी ऐड करा, हालांकि आपकी इंटेंशन ये है कि दो इंटीजर्स को वो ऐड करेगा, या ये है कि आपको स्ट्रिंग्स को भी ऐड करके दिखा रहा है, जो भी उसके पीछे वो कंप्यूटेशन है. तो ऑब्वियसली इट्स इनकरेक्ट. ठीक है ना, तो वैलिड और इनवैलिड है. फिर वैलिड के अंदर आप वो देखेंगे कि अच्छा क्या वो बाउंड्री वैल्यूज क्या है. ठीक है, टेस्टिंग देयर आर डिफरेंट स्टेजेस ऑफ टेस्टिंग लाइक यूनिट टेस्टिंग. Unit testing mean you have just the individual module. अच्छा, तो there are different levels of testing. ठीक है, unit testing mean you have a piece of code, just one module, and you are actually going to test it. फिर क्या होगा, next level subsystem, that is actually the collection or the combination of different modules, and ultimately the system testing, that is the whole system. ठीक है, software quality is improving. What we actually discussed earlier in this lecture, that there were a lot of incidents related to software failure. Then they actually decided that we should have some good practices to actually develop the software. There was one group, Standish group. They actually did a very thorough study of the IT projects, software projects in 1994. And then they actually analyzed that 1/3 of the projects are actually cancelled before the completion. And similarly, half of the projects are actually over time and beyond the time what was allocated. And obviously more cost what was actually estimated. Just one project out of 6 completed on time and budget. That is really, I mean, poor figure. That out of 6, just one is actually on time. So after like 15 years time, they again studied a lot of IT projects, and then they actually come up with this number, that out of 3 projects, 1 is on time and budget. So it means, I mean, this is kind of 50% improvement. In 1994, out of 6, only 1. In 2009, it is out of 3, 1 is on time. So it means what are the actually software engineering practices? They have some positive impact on the IT projects. ये देखें, इसको डायग्राम से बताया है और बड़ा क्लियरली नजर आ रहा है. 1994 में देखें और 2009 में देखें, ऑन टाइम ऑन बजट. कैंसिल्ड भी देखें, यहाँ पे पोर्शन कम हो गया 2009 में, 2004 में इट वाज लाइक मेजर चंक. ठीक है, ओके. द नेक्स्ट टॉपिक, द लास्ट टॉपिक इज सॉफ्टवेयर वारंटीज एंड वेंडर लायबिलिटी. देयर आर सम सॉफ्टवेयर्स which are called shrink wrap software, or we say off the shelf software. What is off the shelf? रेडीमेड. ठीक है, जैसे कोई भी सॉफ्टवेयर है जो बस बना ये श्रिंक रैप क्यों कहते हैं? श्रिंक रैप इज अगेन लाइक वो पॉलिथीन पेपर नहीं होता प्लास्टिक जो आप रैप करते हैं रैपिंग के लिए, सीडीज होती है ना प्लास्टिक कोटिंग के अंदर आप जाते हैं और ले लेते हैं, दैट इज श्रिंक रैप सॉफ्टवेयर, ठीक है? वो इस तरह के जो सॉफ्टवेयर होते हैं, तो most of the software actually mention in their disclaimer that you are going to accept it as it is, no liability, no warranty, ठीक है? अगर आजकल की बात करें ना तो आजकल ठीक है कुछ वेंडर्स ठीक है क्या कहते हैं कि there is money back guarantee, or if you have any problem within certain time, you can actually claim or you can actually ask for the support, ठीक है? Obviously no one is actually going to accept the liability of any kind of injury or any harm that is caused by the software, and again it is something that is not really good, ठीक? अच्छा देखिए, there are two possibilities. One is you just take the software. The other one is you take a product and software is part of that product. Okay? There is a code, commercial code, uniform commercial code in the US that is kind of a standard document for the business transaction, for commercial transactions in US. And this commercial code is actually, you know, related to the products and the services that we in general we have, like banking transactions, banking services, and all other tangible products. But when we talk about the software, there is a debate. Either it's like really a product like we use other products, or it is something else. So at different times when people have problem with the software product, they just go to the court, and court has again divided opinion. In some cases they say that okay, the producer of the software has to pay, has to actually compensate the consumer, but in other cases they say that it is not actually the liability on the producer. Okay, so you can actually study in detail in your chapter. Now if we just do the little bit analysis of the moral analysis of this whole scenario. Number one, if we consider that the vendors, the producers, software producers are actually responsible for for whatever is the harm or injury or whatever is the loss. So what will be the impact of this practice with this treatment? Number one, yes, they will test more. They will be more careful about the software. And then they will go for the insurance, because every businessman or the company who is doing business, they don't take these kind of extra cost. They don't actually they don't afford, but they have other way to actually do this. They just get the different kind of offers from the insurance companies, and then that cost, that burden is actually shifted to the consumer. सही है ना, अपनी जेब से तो नहीं देगा. And then what will be the result? Yes, software will be more expensive, and the small companies, that they will be actually more affected as compared to the large scale companies. And perhaps it may actually affect the innovation. If you are really very responsible, or the sole responsible of the software of your product, that may have errors or the bugs, and that can actually injure, that may injure. So perhaps you are not actually going to do the kind of experimentation. And perhaps software would be more reliable. There are chances that software will be with less bugs, and obviously then more reliable. But then there is another discussion, that what happens in other scenarios, in other cases, like unintentionally, some patient gets the dosage that is not actually good for him or her, and in that case the medical staff or the doctor is not actually really responsible, because he or she has not really the bad intentions, but that is kind of a professional error. So same can be happen in software industry. They are not actually intentionally making products with the bugs, but that is just due to some kind of human errors. So another debate is like a case study is given in the chapter. Someone got the version 1 of the game, and that has different kind of errors in that version, and later on after some period of time that producer actually come up with the new version of the game, and the bugs that were actually identified in the first version that are fixed, but again that organization is charging for the new subscription. So this is something that is not really good. So consumers or the customers shouldn't pay for fixation of the bug. Okay, so they should actually get the free service to fix the bugs. So that's all for this semester. ठीक है?